The footage begins with the unmistakable signature of military surveillance, the grainy, elevated angle, the slow drifting of the camera across a landscape that has long been etched by conflict. These are the images released by the Israeli army. Visuals, they say, capture airstrikes carried out in southern Lebanon, strikes they claim targeted and killed 2 Hezbollah members. As the camera tracks across the terrain, the heat signatures, flashes, and plumes of dust offer a window into a battlefield that rarely pauses, even when ceasefires are publicly declared and political actors insist that calm is in place. The Israeli military insists the strikes were precise, part of what it describes as ongoing defensive operations against Hezbollah presence near the border. But what the video also reveals, without saying a word, is the fragile reality along this frontier. Even under an official ceasefire with the Iranian-backed group, the rhythm of hostility continues. The land below, a patchwork of roads, rural homes, olive groves, and abandoned structures, has become a shadow battleground, one where drones, surveillance radars, and distant operators define much of the violence. The footage shows the landscape moments before impact. The target appears as nothing more than a small moving cluster, indistinguishable without military annotation. Then a bright flash erupts, followed by a cloud of debris rising into the air. The video pans, resets, and follows another angle, another detonation, another claimed strike. The Israeli Defense Forces say these visuals represent the elimination of 2 Hezbollah operatives, though independently verifying such claims remains nearly impossible, given restricted access to the area and the rapidity with which narratives shift in real time. Throughout the region, tension hangs like static in the air. Communities in southern Lebanon have lived through a loop of calm and escalation for years, and the latest incident is only one of many since the ceasefire was declared. Hezbollah has repeatedly accused Israel of violating agreements, while Israel argues that Hezbollah continues to embed fighters, weapons, and surveillance posts dangerously close to its border communities. The ceasefire exists on paper, yet the lived experience for civilians suggests that the line between war and not war grows increasingly thin. As the camera continues tracking along the terrain in the footage, the silence within the video becomes its own statement. There are no sounds of jets, no roar of explosions, only the stark visual record. It is a reminder that in modern conflicts, destruction is often seen before it is heard, sometimes seen only through the filtered lens of military communication. These images are curated, selected, and disseminated with purpose. They are meant to demonstrate capability, control, response. They are meant to reassure one audience and send a warning to another. Beyond the borders of the frame, political calculations drive much of the military action. Israel's repeated strikes inside Lebanon, despite the ceasefire, signal an ongoing mistrust, an insistence that Hezbollah's presence along the southern frontier remains an unacceptable threat. Hezbollah, backed by Iran both financially and strategically, has established itself as a deeply entrenched political and military force within Lebanon. This dual identity complicates every response, every clash, every message sent by airstrike or statement. Inside Lebanon, the population reacts with a mix of fear, frustration, and exhaustion. Many regions in the south have already suffered displacement in previous conflicts. Families who returned after earlier wars are now watching military videos like these circulate online, prompting new worries about another escalation. Some villages near the border have experienced partial evacuations, while others brace for the possibility that limited exchanges of fire may once again evolve into larger confrontations. For Israeli communities, the concern is equally present. Residents in northern Israel live with recurring alerts and the knowledge that Hezbollah maintains a vast arsenal of rockets capable of striking deep into Israeli territory. Officials argue that targeted operations like the one shown in this footage are necessary measures to prevent attacks before they happen. They describe these strikes as preventative actions, controlled, limited, and essential for security, but the cycle is predictable. One side strikes, the other responds. A retaliation leads to a counter-retaliation. International mediators have attempted to break this rhythm for years, yet the border remains one of the most sensitive flashpoints in the region. As the video continues, the camera's perspective shifts slightly. It follows another moving figure, a vehicle, or perhaps a cluster of personnel, before another blast breaks the frame, dust rises again, and the camera lingers as though documenting evidence. The footage is presented as proof of intent, proof of capability, proof that despite the ceasefire, Israel is willing to act on what it perceives as imminent threats. Hezbollah, for its part, typically responds with its own statements, often denying Israeli accounts or asserting that the individuals targeted were civilians or lower-level affiliates. In the information battlefield, the truth becomes a matter of interpretation, each side shaping the narrative to fit broader strategies. These images, stripped of sound, also strip away certain layers of context that journalists must restore. Behind the explosions are the growing fears that Lebanon, already grappling with economic collapse, political stagnation, and infrastructural breakdown, cannot withstand a prolonged confrontation. International organizations warn that any significant escalation could have catastrophic humanitarian consequences. Meanwhile, in Israel, domestic debates continue over the country's strategy. Critics argue that military pressure alone cannot resolve the underlying tension with Hezbollah. Others insist that failing to act decisively invites greater danger. The footage now circulating is used by supporters of the strike to reinforce the argument that threats remain active, visible, and immediate. Zooming out from these visuals, international observers see a broader pattern emerging in the Middle East, a region where ceasefires increasingly function as temporary pauses rather than long-term solutions. Every strike becomes a message, every message becomes leverage, and every act of leverage risks igniting something larger. Inside UN offices and diplomatic circles, discussions intensify whenever incidents like these surface. Calls for restraint typically follow, accompanied by warnings that renewed escalations could unravel regional stability. But the cycle continues: strikes, accusations, counter-accusations, all replaying across borders and screens. The surveillance imagery moves again across the rooftops and dirt roads of the target zone. A second explosion, caught from a slightly altered angle, signals the completion of the operation. The footage ends, but the implications do not. What we see is only a fraction of what takes place on the ground, a curated moment capturing a conflict that stretches back decades and shows no sign of truly pausing. For the Israeli military, the release of these images serves as a demonstration of vigilance, proof that it remains attentive and active despite the ceasefire conditions. For Hezbollah, the incident may become another justification for future actions. For civilians caught between these two forces, it is one more reminder of how quickly the landscape around them can shift from uneasy calm to sudden violence. As the narrative continues, the journalist's task becomes to connect these images to the lived reality on both sides of the border. Local Lebanese farmers, working fields passed down for generations, now say they hesitate to go out at certain hours, unsure when the next drone might fly overhead. Residents of northern Israel speak of sleeping lightly, waiting for alerts that may signal rocket launches or cross-border fire. These personal fears are missing from the video, yet define how communities experience the conflict. Regional analysts point out that the repetition of such strikes may indicate that both sides are testing boundaries, probing to see how far they can act without triggering a broader confrontation. Israel's decision to publish the footage suggests confidence in its precision capabilities, while Hezbollah's silence or limited response could signal strategic patience. Yet patience has limits. History along this frontier has shown that a single miscalculation, a single strike misinterpreted, or a single retaliation underestimated can escalate into a conflict neither side publicly claims to want. The ceasefire, though announced, remains only as strong as the willingness of both sides to abide by it. And this latest strike places that willingness under renewed scrutiny. The greater geopolitical landscape complicates matters further. Iran's support for Hezbollah is long-standing. While Israel maintains firm alliances with Western powers, every action along the border reverberates far beyond the hills of southern Lebanon. Diplomats in Washington, Tehran, Brussels, and Riyadh monitor developments closely, aware that regional rivalries can ignite through localized incidents. As the voiceover continues, the images fade, but the story does not. The footage becomes a case study, an artifact of modern warfare where drone-captured visuals function as both tactical documentation and public messaging. It is a reminder of how conflicts today are fought not only on the ground, but also through media channels, shaping perceptions long before independent verification is possible. The people living beneath these drone paths understand this more than anyone. They see the aftermath firsthand: damaged buildings, scorched fields, families forced to relocate. They hear the distant booms, even when the video remains silent. For them, the ceasefire is a technical term. The reality is a fragile equilibrium, constantly shaken by developments like the one captured here. As the narrative fills the duration of the video, it becomes clear that the footage is not merely about two individuals allegedly targeted and killed. It is about the long arc of a conflict shaped by history, ideology, territorial disputes, political alliances, and the everyday human cost. It is about a region where even calm is unstable, where peace is more often an aspiration than an achievement. The script deepens, exploring how military operations of this nature influence domestic politics. In Israel, footage like this is often referenced in parliamentary debates focusing on national security and defense strategy. Politicians argue over the balance between deterrence and diplomacy. Advocacy groups question the legality of cross-border operations during ceasefires. Security experts defend the necessity of eliminating threats early in Lebanon. Reactions vary depending on political factions. Some condemn Israel's actions as violations of sovereignty, while others quietly worry about the destabilizing impact Hezbollah's military presence brings to their towns. Lebanese analysts emphasize that the country's fractured political system makes it difficult to present a unified response, leaving the civilian population to absorb the consequences. Throughout the long duration of this report, the narrative circles back to the footage itself, brief, silent, intense. It becomes a symbol of a conflict defined by surveillance, targeted strikes, and the constant tension between declared peace and sustained hostility. These images remind viewers that wars today often lack a clear beginning or end. Instead, they unfold in cycles, flares of escalation, pauses, repeated violations, diplomatic attempts, and the ever-present risk of sliding back into large-scale confrontation. As the final stretch of the script unfolds, the journalist's voice reflects on the broader meaning behind the footage. The landscape we see, dry earth, scattered trees, simple structures, is one that has endured conflict after conflict, each leaving its mark. And now, once again, it has become the stage for another targeted strike, another political message, another reminder of unresolved tension. The video ends, but the air around this region remains heavy. Analysts warn that events like these could shape the months ahead, influencing negotiations, military posturing, and the fragile sense of stability that borders on illusion. While officials reference ceasefire agreements, the visuals speak to a parallel truth, that this stretch of land remains one of the most volatile frontiers in the Middle East. And so the voiceover closes by grounding the narrative in the core reality underscored by the footage. Conflict persists even when not officially declared airstrikes occur, even when ceasefires are in place. Narratives clash even when images seem definitive. In southern Lebanon, the ground smoulders beneath the weight of history, politics, and power, a weight carried, as always, by the civilians living closest to the line.